Good morning, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all on the behalf of the co-organizers at the 3rd UN South Asia Forum on Business and Human Rights. I'm Harpreet Kaur, the Business and Human Rights Specialist at the UNDP Asia Pacific Center, and I have with me Saeed Niaz, who's the team leader, Better Work ILO Country Office, Bangladesh.
Right. Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone.
Thanks. The 3rd UN South Asia Forum on Business and Human Rights is co-organized by the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights, the International Labour Organization, and the United Nations Development Programme, supported by the Government of Sweden and various other development partners. This is our 3rd forum, and I'm really proud to say that it has become the largest event on business and human rights in the region. What started as a 2-day forum in 2019 is now a Business and Human Rights Week. We have been running sessions since 23rd of March. We received a tremendous response from partners, and 40 of them came together to organize site sessions, country sessions, and stakeholder sessions. Overall, we have had 32 sessions at the South Asia Forum. While the forum officially starts today, so this is the opening plenary, this is the inaugural address, the pre-forum sessions, including thematic, country, and stakeholder-specific sessions, have been held under Chatham House rules. The stakeholders were also, the exclusive sessions also helped us create a space to facilitate participatory, inclusive, and meaningful dialogue. The country sessions also discuss the country progress, but also the challenges that countries are facing in promoting the implementation of UN guiding principles on business and human rights. Over 1,600 people registered from 90 forums. So it's not just actually the South Asia Forum. Of course, we would be discussing a lot more about what's happening in South Asia, assess the progress that the region has made, but this also brings in a lot of attention from all other countries. And I think just the fact that over 90 people from 90 countries have joined, it shows how much interest people have in what's happening in our region. And with that, so thank you for joining us today. I would now like to invite Sudipta Mukherjee, Resident Representatives, United Nations Development Programme, to welcome our distinguished guests. Thank you, Sudipta.
Good morning, everybody. Shubho Shakal. I have the sort of pleasure to, receive Dr. Ahmed Kaikaus, Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister, Her Excellency Alex, the Ambassador of Sweden to Bangladesh. And I always mention her as the youngest ambassador that I've met anywhere in the world. Professor Surya Deva from the Business and Human Rights Working Group, and my own colleague from the UN system, ILO, Tomo. And of course, all of you from different countries in the region. A very warm welcome to you. I see Dr. Kamal as well. So good morning, Dr. Kamal. You already had a warm word of welcome from Harpreet Kaur, who has been leading the work on business and human rights in Bangladesh as well elsewhere in the region. And since the outbreak of the COVID pandemic, we were unable to meet. In fact, this was meant to be in Kathmandu a couple of years ago. And then finally, when things started looking up a bit and we saw the ebbing of the pandemic, we thought that we should not wait any further and actually have it in Dhaka as soon as possible. And it comes at a very good time to Dhaka, and particularly, when the country is actually gearing up for many exciting things over the next few years. I think this is the right time to have something like this happening in Bangladesh. So since the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, our way of life has completely changed. But thanks to digital technology, dialogues and meetings could continue virtually. And we managed to, in fact, our own office, we saw that productivity had actually increased, where people were commuting less. And just before we got in here, we were discussing about commuting every day in traffic. So when people commute less, they probably save time when they can actually work. However, at the same time, the moment conditions improved, people wanted to come back to office. They wanted to come back to office and actually interact as normal human beings. In fact, just before we got in here, Professor Surya Deva was telling us how traffic or bad traffic can also affect our human rights. Because if I want to meet a family member in another part of the city and I can't get there easily, or if I have to inhale polluted air, it affects my right to health. So I especially thank everybody who's made the effort for traveling to Dhaka. especially from colleagues from elsewhere in the South Asia region. The pandemic has squeezed our economies dry. Not every country is able or ready to invest in economic and social recovery fully. And in fact, currently with the other crises going on in the world, it is becoming a very difficult moment for many, many countries around the world. On the other hand, amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, the world has started to discuss how we can design the global governance structure that respects people and the planet for sustainable recovery for all. We hope the transition process is just, resilient, not for the time being, but also for future generations. Please allow me to share you'll hear from Dr. Kaikaus, I'm sure, but please allow me to share the current situation of Bangladesh. Along with the COVID-19 recovery process, Bangladesh has recently made commendable progress and commitments towards development, and is witnessed or actually getting ready for a very imminent LDC graduation in 2026. And recently it has adopted the 8th five-year plan, which among other things actually not only looks at COVID recovery, but also looks at a sustainable graduation. The ongoing rebanding of Bangladesh as an attractive destination for trade and investments presents an opportunity to reconfigure the country's economy as an economy that not only performs well financially, but it can do so without harming people and the environment. In fact, on hindsight, I remember that in 2020, when the UNDP's signature product, which is the human development in the age of the Anthropocene, at that particular point of time, I didn't even know what Anthropocene meant, but realized that Anthropocene is the age of human beings. And when human activities are themselves responsible for risking the lives of human beings. And it had argued at that particular time that human activities are becoming an existential threat for human beings by irreversibly affecting or impacting on planetary health. We have subsequently seen IPCC reports. In fact, more recently, we have the 6th IPCC report, which also condemns human activities to be the sole contributor to ailing planet. And particularly countries like Bangladesh, which are at the sort of forefront of facing the terrible impacts of climate change, and more frequent. In fact, I keep arguing this, that people used to distinguish between natural and human-induced disasters. There's nothing called natural disasters left any longer. Everything is human-induced. Whether you have protracted floods, whether you have severe cyclones, these are all causes of climate change, and which is actually induced by human activities. While that does make a strong case for environmental considerations of clean production chains, we now know the importance of the nexus between human rights and equity considerations and environment. In fact, it's not only green and clean, but rights compliant production chains that will become a necessary condition for sustainable business. Indeed, as we will see in the coming days, promoting responsible business is an essential piece in the sustainable development puzzle. Respecting human rights is not just a moral imperative, but has also become an economic imperative. In fact, we have recently conducted a study here in Bangladesh. We looked at future export markets. We looked at future generation consumers, and we realized that future generation consumers are going to be much more discerning on how green, clean, and human rights compliant production chains are when they choose their products. So I think there is an opportunity for businesses to get the business right, to be able to make business in the future. So these observations also apply to every other country in South Asia. And as we have heard during country sessions held before the forum, there are common challenges and opportunities for governments and businesses across the region. In South Asia, still a wide range of systemic challenges continues to put 2 billion people and the environment in the region at risk. Bangladesh and countries in the region share common issues, similar complexities, and similar approaches in doing business. While there has been promising business stories in South Asia over the pandemic, the region faces challenges that obstruct business respect for human rights and undermine sustainable development. Unregulated business operations exacerbate climate change. We know that. Environmental degradation and biodiversity loss. In fact, there has been an amazing amount of biodiversity losses which have been occurring, and I've been looking at figures. The amount of plastic that goes into oceans, for example, the amount of biodiversity losses, the number of species that will get lost forever, is something that has become a very important part of the climate debate now. In fact, even in the aspect of loss and damage, it is Bangladesh which is actually pushing for losses and damages to be better calculated, and so that countries can be compensated for the biodiversity losses that they are facing. We also end up disproportionately impacting vulnerable groups in the society, including women, minorities, people with disabilities, seasonal or migrant workers, informal workers without appropriate social security measures, or safe and conducive work conditions. Prevailing inequality and discrimination in the region keeps actually driving social divides. Lives of people across South Asia continue to suffer from deep-rooted structural challenges and obstacles to upholding equity and dignity, which require a transformative social change to cause perspective and behavioral changes in society. Just to give you a sense of the numbers, the informal economy makes up for 80% of workers and over 90% of business operations in South Asia. And that is another complexity that we have to constantly deal with, because if they're outside the formal sector, it is very difficult or almost impossible to regulate them. To usher in a new era, South Asia needs transformation by recalibrating responsible business for a just recovery. This year's forum allows us to strengthen regional momentum for transformation and chart action to advance business and human rights at the regional and country level. The UN's guiding principles on business and human rights provide a blueprint for states and businesses to navigate risks and opportunities associated with responsible business. In fact, last year, one of the contributions that the Bangladesh program made was to make available this guiding principles in Bangla. And I think that's again something that I don't know whether we have copies that we can distribute. Over the next 2 days, a wide range of themes in the context of South Asia will be discussed to promote responsible business practices across South Asia. And let me quote the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, at the Human Rights Council's 49th session in February this year, when he said, "Human rights cannot be confiscated by dictators or erased by poverty, nor are they a history that can be, or nor are they a luxury that can be left for later. So we have to do now, act now, and make sure that we are able to uphold human rights. Now it is the time to secure the well-being of people, economies, societies, and our planet. The UN system, and represented here by ILO, the UN's working group on business and human rights, and UNDP, have both normative and strong operational capacities and can act as an enabler to implement both the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, together with the UN's guiding principle on business and human rights in the region, and forge a new normal of a sustainable and responsible business environment where growth and respect for people and the planet go hand in hand." Let me repeat, where growth and respect for people and the planet can go hand in hand. The UN is ready to work together to ensure a much brighter future under strong partnerships with you all. So once again, I take this opportunity to thank everybody in the room, and I wish you productive deliberations over the next few days, and hope you will come up with something concrete that not only you can do as a collective as South Asia, but also back in your home countries. So I wish you well. And I have to sort of apologize because I won't be able to join the rest of your discussions, but I'm sure I will get a good readout once I'm back here. Thank you very much. Shobai bhalo thakben, shusto thakben.
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee, for so wonderfully setting the tone. We have heard you like how it has been always the human-centric, great things and not so great things, and how it must be inevitably also human-centric going forward. So that was wonderful tone setting from your side. As you know, the International Labour Organization, in collaboration with UNWG and UNDP, is hosting this forum today. At this point, I would like to request Mr. Chumo Puchiainen, the country director, ILO Bangladesh, for his welcoming note and also share his thoughts with the optics of labor dynamics, tripartite collaboration, and most importantly, what the future entails. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And first I want to recognize, of course, the Honorable Dais, Dr. Ahmad Kaikaus, Principal Secretary from the Prime Minister's Office, Her Excellency Ambassador Alexander Berg von Linde, and my colleague Suripto, and of course also Professor Suraya, who will then lead us later on into these deliberations. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you to all. On behalf of the ILO, I would like to warmly welcome you to this third UN South Asia Forum on Business and Human Rights. I am pleased that ILO, in collaboration with the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights and the UNDP, that we are able to co-host this event here in Bangladesh today. As we confront the impacts of both public health crises and climate crisis, the imperative is starkly clear that industries and businesses must adapt to fit a future in which prosperity is not measured only on economic value, but that achieving the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit is essential. We know that governments are increasingly aware that compliance with fundamental labor standards and national labor laws is the future of production, and that they are taking steps to make it happen. Increasingly, there have been growing legal requirements that companies to conduct due diligence in their supply chains, and we see the emergence of a new generation of free trade agreements that include sustainability chapters, including on labor. We also know that integrating business and human rights objectives makes business sense. It is not only for compliance with laws or mitigating legal or reputational risks, but also to meet customers' expectations, promote access to markets, and attract investments to the countries. Issues that I'm sure all the countries who are part of these deliberations today are acutely aware of. We as ILO and also other UN agencies, we have a growing body of evidence that respecting labor rights and providing good working conditions has a strong correlation with worker retention, with productivity and profitability. These are essential ingredients of sustainable businesses. Our evidence also indicates that businesses can be a positive engine of development to create employment, to accelerate skills development, boost incomes, and improve livelihoods for workers and communities and their nations. But only if the businesses are run in a fair, responsible, and sustainable basis. The ILO, as a tripartite organization, has been working with our constituents to promote employer and business case for labor rights and for sustainability of businesses. This, for now, over 100 years and over 50 years here in Bangladesh. We work with governments, both in home and host countries, through ministries of labor, other ministries such as law, home, commerce, and so forth, to develop a smart mix of policy tools, such as strengthening labor administration, improving understanding of labor standards and application of national laws, to ensure production is respectable and in right conditions throughout the supply chain. We also work directly with businesses and employers' organizations and business membership organizations to promote responsible business conduct through instruments such as ILO multinational enterprises and social policy, or what is called M&E declaration, or principles invested in. Notably, in South Asia region, the leading work on responsible business conduct has happened in countries such as Pakistan and Nepal, where there are national focal points and strong systems for this. Additionally, there is work that is being done with many of you directly with businesses to demonstrate how in practice these principles can be applied at the factory floors or at the floors of any service or other industries. In the RMG and garment industry, we have a very strong Better Work program that is also here today represented, which showcases that evidence that we're talking about, how factory level principles are applied and how they can actually positively correlate with policies and principles at the national level. And lastly, but not least, I would want to say that no policy and no principle can be really and truly applied without the voice of the workers and the representation of those who actually work the work. So this is something that we strongly would like to see invested in when we think about business and human rights. With this forum, we hope to see a broader dialogue for a change with all of you, all the stakeholders here today, including civil societies, journalists, and others, and a strengthened participation amongst and by the UN system, developmental partners, and government to do the right thing and to look into the closer correlation between government, governance, business and human rights, and the society at large. I look forward to hearing the discussions today. I think there is a wealth of knowledge, not only in this room, but also those who are virtually participating in these proceedings. And I think a very positive and forward-looking national programs and plans for business and human rights can and should come out of these deliberations. I want to recognize again the host and the honorable guest, Dr. Ahmad Kaukaus, Principal Secretary. We are very happy as ILO and UNDP to be here today, and we are also very happy that this event continues to be successfully sponsored by the government of Sweden. I want to close by saying that a considerable investment and progress has been made here in Bangladesh in these matters. There is much better labor market governance. There are attention and focus on improving labor conditions and industrial safety as we speak. This kind of convening can continue to help to promote even better approaches as the foundations over the years have been built. So together with the government, employers and workers and all of you, we can further this agenda in a positive way. The outcome of this rich discussion in this forum will help in guiding the direction of the strategy and future outcomes to promote business and human rights, not only here in Bangladesh, but everywhere in South Asia, and also through that effort all over the world. Thank you so much, and I wish you good proceedings here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chumo Putiainen, Country Director, ILO Bangladesh. If we are taking few keywords from your speech, sir, so we heard respect, we heard dignity, and we heard how critical is this for the workers' voice to be there for every level of conversations. Again, maybe being human-centric, right? Coming back to that point. So now I would like to request Ambassador, Her Excellency Alexandra Berg von Linde, Embassy of Sweden in Bangladesh, for her valuable speech. I hope I didn't butcher the... Okay, thank you so much.
Dear Chief Guest, Dr. Ahmad Kaukaus, Principal Secretary of the PM's Office, dear representatives of UN organizations, governments, international organizations, and civil society, ladies and gentlemen. Shubho Shokal, good morning to you all. Pleasure to be here today, and good morning to everyone here in Dhaka and also virtually around the world. It is a pleasure for me to deliver my opening remarks at the third UN South Asia Forum on Business and Human Rights. And it feels particularly relevant for a couple of reasons. One is the importance that my government attaches to promoting sustainable business around the world. The UN guiding principles on business and human rights are a central starting point in this regard. And the second related reason is, of course, the Swedish engagement in this initiative, Business and Human Rights in South Asia, that we have been supporting since 2017. It is the first of its kind to promote the implementation of the UN guiding principles in the Asia region. This project has been rather unique, I dare say, in strengthening the regional momentum in promoting responsible business practices across Asia. The regional and sub-regional approach of the initiative, including the kind of forum we are attending today, is instrumental in raising common difficulties and complex issues, while functioning as a platform for discussions that also amplifies voices from people on the ground. We have seen some encouraging developments in little time. Advocates for business and human rights have managed to raise awareness about why responsible business is important, as well as the different tools at our disposal to promote this objective. Encouraging process includes the numerous ongoing and concluded processes to develop national action plans on business and human rights in Asia. Not only have a significant number of Asian governments committed towards developing national action plans, but we can also find good practices of how these plans are being developed in consultative, inclusive, and participatory ways. And increasingly, more and more Asian countries are beginning to implement these plans. As you might know, Sweden was the first country to develop a feminist foreign policy, and I represent a feminist government. For us, this means that gender equality is central to the government's priorities in decision-making, in representation, and resource allocation. This goes for all aspects of foreign policy, including business and trade, because we know that there is overwhelming evidence that gender equality boosts economic growth. Despite this, trade policies today benefits men more than women. We therefore need to step up efforts to ensure equality also in trade policy and trade promotion activities. This is especially important in times of crisis because we know that discriminated and marginalized groups are being hit the hardest. This year, Sweden celebrates 50 years of bilateral relations with Bangladesh. And it is a good opportunity to look back on 5 decades of successful and dynamic collaboration, and also to look ahead. Bangladesh has made a truly impressive economic and social development journey that has led to its graduation from LDC status. And this will also mean enhanced commitments, not least in the social and green areas, including human rights and improved working conditions. In this regard, Sweden stands ready to continued commitment and support. Though positive steps have been taken in Asia with regards to business and human rights, regional challenges remain, including when it comes to civic space in societies. And this is also why common forums like these are important to raise and to share the voices of workers, to share experiences among stakeholders, to build bridges, and to engage in inclusive discussions that involve all partners of society. Now, the most important work begins. Ensuring business respect for human rights is by no means a straightforward task. In order to solve challenges, more progress is needed. The intellectual father of the UN guiding principles, the late John Ruggie, famously wrote that it is imperative to create change where it matters most in the daily lives of people. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what is most important at the end of the day. We need tangible improvements for everyone, including those sections of society that face the most disproportionate human rights impacts. And this list is rather long, from human rights defenders, women and children, LGBTI persons, migrant and informal workers, to minorities, indigenous people, and persons with disabilities. Not only does this require access to effective remedy when human rights abuses and violation occurs, it also requires preventing them from happening in the first place. However, we cannot make this a reality without placing our economy and our society under a microscope and in identifying exactly what is causing these deeply rooted vulnerabilities and inequalities. Moreover, we should not mistake business respect for human rights as solely as an ethical imperative. It is a matter of our common obligations under international human rights law. Sweden is in favor of an ambitious EU legislation with mandatory human rights and environmental due diligence duty for business. Equally important is that EU free trade agreements are accompanied by strong labor rights provisions based on the ILO's fundamental principles and rights at work. This means that businesses all over, as part of a global supply chain, will need to show whether and how they respect human rights or risk losing future business opportunities. Integrated and complex issues in society needs to be approached in a coherent way, involving concerted action from a wide range of stakeholders. This is also why I hope that we can welcome new faces to our BHR community, including a wide range of civil society actors. In closing, once again, I would like to congratulate the project and this forum for the achievements made. Going forward, it is our hope that we can continue pushing the envelope on business and human rights and ensure that responsible business becomes a fundamental element in our future sustainable development. After all, human rights is everyone's business. I thank you. Onneksi olkoon.
Thank you so very much, Her Excellency. Yes, a wonderful speech, and we have heard, particularly in addition to human rights, how inclusion is indispensable for the progress we want. Thank you again. So at this point, we are going to welcome our chief guest for his address. I would like to request Dr. Ahmad Kaikous, Principal Secretary of the Prime Minister's Office, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, to come here, sir, and share your thoughts, please.
Thank you. Let me observe the protocol first. Her Excellency Alexandra Berg von Linde, I hope I did not make a mistake. However, you did not say my name perfectly, so I have right to make mistakes since we are talking about human rights. I'm just joking. My friend Sudipta is not here, so Country Director Tumo Puteinin, I hope, okay, sorry about that. Professor Surya Deva on the podium, so protocol observers, dear friends, distinguished guests, good morning. First of all, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to say a few words and attend this inaugural session. Honestly speaking, I'm struggling still. This is because probably this is not my cup of tea. I think this is the subject matter of my friend, Dr. Kamal. However, I just wanted to, although by the way, I have a written suggested points from UNDP. Unfortunately, I consider myself as a visually impaired. I cannot read speeches. I always struggle. So I will say something that I believe probably is going to be discussed today. First of all, I was asking the ambassador a while ago, the population of Sweden. She told me that the population of Sweden is 10 million and Sweden is 3 times bigger than Bangladesh. So if you compare, Bangladesh is 1/3 of Sweden, has 17 times more population than Sweden. So in this scenario, Bangladesh does not have any other option. In fact, South Asia does not have any, we don't have any other option but to consider human rights or cherish the values of human rights, because we have more humans, population in our territory than anywhere in the world. So then I remember one speech I was listening in the YouTube. Milton Friedman, sorry, no, not Milton Friedman. Oh, come on, I just forgot his name. He's a famous economist. So he was giving a talk in Harvard, in Stanford about the role of the government. And he had a very unique point raised by him was we always consider the freedom of speech. So freedom of speech has always an opposite to that. What is that? Freedom to listen. So in every aspect, there are two players, right? So when we talk about human rights, especially I was trying to comprehend the relationship between the business as well as the human rights. You know, when we were students, we were very much excited about, Marxian or Karl Marx and, socialism. So I took the class of Marxian economics when I was a student in my university in economics. So the theory of surplus value, which was advocated by Karl Marx, the production or the output has at that time, three fundamental elements. One is land, labor, capital. So according to Marx, I'm sorry, I'm coming to my point. Probably you are thinking what the hell he's talking about. So Karl Marx's argument was that land cannot change or increase the production as an input. Capital, again, cannot do anything. So if there is any surplus generated, then it is the labor. So the labor should get the surplus of any production. So later, in later years, Sir Arthur Lewis, he was also a famous economist and Nobel laureate. According to him, he was right, but the problem is if you distribute the surplus to the labor, labor will just consume it. So it will not regenerate. On the other hand, if the surplus goes to an entrepreneur, then it can regenerate. So later on in economics, the another factor included entrepreneurship. So what I'm saying, when you are talking about businesses, there are businesses that run. I'm sorry, I did not hear much about businesses. I heard a lot about climate change and other issues. But if you consider businesses and if you want to integrate human rights, then we must appreciate the role of labor, but we should also appreciate the role of entrepreneurs. Then we can have a good coexistence. Sometimes, since I have been working in the government, we are fortunate to interact with both the sides, and then we have to adjust, and we should also consider. I'm sorry, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. You see, this was also raised by the Honorable Prime Minister when we had this Rana Plaza. You see, through the globalization, we are benefiting. In fact, Bangladesh has been benefited immensely through, especially if I consider the garments factories. But, there are also buyers who is coming to countries like us where we have low skilled labors and cheap labor. Since I am enjoying the benefit, I think we should also share the burden to improve the livelihoods of those people who are at the back front. So since we are here, I think, in South Asia, so I think members from other countries are also here. So we should think in a body, not just isolate. You see, when we are talking about the rights, fundamental rights, our constitution has fundamental rights. US Constitution has fundamental rights, right? Our constitution is larger than US Constitution. I think that US Constitution has only 7 articles. So one of the founding fathers or the writers of Constitution was James Madison. James Madison has argued that ambition must be counteracted by ambition. So that means we have both the ambitions from both the sides. Then we need to make the balance. For instance, I want to listen loud music in the middle of the night, right? So that's my right. That's my choice. But I should not have any right to disturb the sleep of my neighbor. So that is where the balance comes forward. So I think, when we are talking about that, we need to incorporate such issues, how to balance it out. Otherwise, right itself is not enough. You see, I'm sorry, I cannot resist myself criticizing my own, our own bad habits. You see, when we make a house, you see, I make, say I'm building a house, all the materials I put on the street. So that is why I always say that this is a land of freedom. Usually, if you go anywhere, you cannot put things on the street, which is the public domain. So that is how we need to, improve our system. We need to change the mindset of the people of our nation and around the globe. On the other hand, if I say, you see, if you look into the history of especially Bangladesh or even South Asia, we are slowly changing and we are adopting many, institutions. We are making institutions. We are making policies. We are adopting, behavior which was not there, because the reason is that you cannot, see the future. Actually, you adapt when you move forward. So like, for instance, as I think it has been mentioned many times here, Bangladesh is 87%, in fact, of our labor force is in informal sector. So formal behavior is different and informal is different. Like the maid that I have in my house can be considered as a part of my family or as an employee. So over the years, probably it was part of the family. That is how it probably coexisted. Otherwise, it would not have, we could have like vicious system in our families. However, with the change of the, society and economy as well as, urbanization, the pattern is changing. Like in the rural societies, the maid that worked in our, I have also witnessed in our village homes, we saw that the people, those who were working in the field, I never found that our, fathers and others considered them as their employee. They considered them as a part of their production process. However, when I come back to my urban society, there is a distinct, division. So all these things actually depend on how we emerge. And that is why it is very important to have this kind of dialogue and also know each other's perspective, through which we should be able to improve our society, which is the ultimate goal. And I think since all of us are democracies, the fundamental basis of democracy is pragmatism and pluralism. That means we interact, we talk to each other. And finally, I think the right is always, I believe the best quote I have ever encountered is the quote of Confucius, do not do things to others that you do not want them to do to you. So I think if we follow this principle, then, and we believe in this, or if I refer to, oh, I'm sorry, I got the red notice. I'm sorry about that. Well, no, I'm done. So this is probably the last thing I wanted to say. If we consider that, we need to enjoy our life, not affecting the others, then probably we can come to a conclusion and also move forward and change our society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And I did not mean to interrupt, but because it's a hybrid format, there are people there are speakers who are joining and waiting for the next session as well. So thank you very much for your remarks. Last but not the least, I would now like to invite Professor Surya Deva, member UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights, to deliver the keynote address. I think I really have to say this because, Surya, you started this, it was your idea to start the South Asia Forum. And I still remember we had the first South Asia Forum. You gave us the idea, we should have a South Asia Forum in 2018, like October. We had the first one in November in Delhi, where we had 200 people. Last year, we had some close to 2,000 people joining us online, thanks to pandemic. But also today, we've seen that over 1,600 people have registered, and I think we do have about 150 and 200 people here. I think this is really a special one, Surya, doesn't it? Isn't it like a special one? Because this also is Surya's last forum in the capacity of the UN Working Group member of the Business and Human Rights. And I know we're all waiting to hear from you. So Surya, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here and making the time to be here.
Thank you very much, Harpreet, for the kind words and introduction. At the outset, it's really a great pleasure to be in the company of Dr. Kaikus, the Principal Secretary, Prime Minister's Office, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Sweden, and the Deputy Director of ILO. So I know that we are running late. So I had my remarks for about 10 minutes, but I will try to finish in 5 minutes or so. So if that is possible. I think we started this journey in South Asia, as Harpreet mentioned, in 2019. And the idea that I had is that if we want to make progress in Asia Pacific, perhaps Asia Pacific is too big and too diverse. So how do we have this conversation around business and human rights in Asia Pacific? And one idea that I had for colleagues in UNDP, ILO, and other UN agencies is that can we approach it in a more sub-regional basis? Can we bring stakeholders in South Asia together? Can we bring stakeholders in East Asia together? Can we bring stakeholders in the Pacific part of the world together? And I wanted to start something in the Middle East, which could not happen, but that was the aspiration. And of course, we have a major bringing together all the stakeholders in Bangkok in the Asia Pacific Forum. So that is the idea. In my view, these events trigger change. Because when we had the first forum in New Delhi, the Indian government launched the National Guidelines on Responsible Business Conduct. They revised those guidelines in line with the UN Guiding Principles. That also triggered the government of Pakistan to start the process of developing a National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. And in fact, the Pakistan is the first government in South Asia to have this National Action Plan. I understand the government of Nepal is in very advanced stage of drafting a National Action Plan. And I very much hope that with the presence of the Principal Secretary, that the Bangladesh government will take the leadership in developing a National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. And we are committed to provide any support that may be needed. The government of Maldives, and I think we have the representatives in the room, they're also very keen to move ahead And I understand that the progress is also being made in Sri Lanka. So basically, this forum has triggered those changes. It also provided as a platform for networking, and also it facilitates peer learning amongst stakeholders. So I think we are definitely making progress, even if these are baby steps. These are important baby steps in the Global South, in my view, to take ownership on business and human rights agenda. Now, as a way forward, I would like to very quickly mention 5 suggestions. And because we are in Bangladesh, I will frame it in terms of Bs. So 5 Bs as my suggestions. I've been working in this space for more than 20 years, in the part of working group almost close to 6 years. So based on my understanding of the discourse globally in the Global South, these are my suggestions. My first suggestion is breaking the silos. I think it is very critical that the UN agencies come out of their islands. And I think this forum is a concrete example of that. UNDP, ILO coming together, UN Working Group coming together, but hopefully we can have other agencies, UN Women and other partners, UNICEF and everyone, IOM working together. This is very crucial. We also have those silos in the government departments and ministries. So it is crucial that we see business and human rights as a cross-cutting issue, because this is not merely an issue for labor ministry. This is not an issue merely for the Ministry of Environment or women or children. This is a cross-cutting issue because we would like to ensure that the balance is struck. I will just pick one word from the speech of the Principal Secretary, the balance. So how do we strike this balance? So profit making in itself is a great enterprise, but if this profit is not with principles, then it becomes problematic. And I think that is where the BHR agenda is crucial, because we are trying to strike this balance. The second B that I have is bust the myth. What is the myth? I talk to the government officials all over the world, including in South Asia and Global South generally. And I see this tension. Oh, we need to develop. Economic development, growth is crucial. And if we start focusing on human rights, environment, and climate change, that path is going to be slowed down. In my view, if we are really committed to the idea of inclusive and sustainable development, if we are really committed to the idea of leaving no one behind, then there is no conflict, no contradiction. We have to create an ecosystem in which all the aspirations of everyone are taken into account by the government policies, and businesses are also part of that particular process where they're moving further. The third B that I would like to highlight is beyond the humans. I think Sudipto has left, but he mentioned this anthropocentric approach. Of course, human rights are about human beings. But I think if we focus merely on human beings, this planet will not survive. It is very crucial that we look beyond human beings. We look at the biodiversity, we look at the rivers, glaciers, rainforest, and the entire ecosystem. And I think that is where I'm suggesting that the BHR agenda going forward has to go beyond human beings. I'm not saying forget about human beings, but sometimes human beings can be selfish. We cut trees to build our houses, and then we want to go for a holiday. We go to a resort where there are a lot of trees. So I think we need to overcome this issue, that human beings have to build this planet together in a way that it is sustainable for everyone. The fourth B is build the capacity. And here I would like to highlight the critical role of the informal economy actors and small and medium-sized enterprises. I think the BHR agenda in the Global South, especially in South Asia here, we have to pay greater attention to build the capacity of these small enterprises, family-owned businesses. How can we bring them on this tent of business and human rights, what resources they need, what financial incentives they need, and how we can work together to ensure that all of us are respecting human rights. My fifth and the final B is bridge the imbalance of power. There is a significant imbalance of power between the communities on the ground and the corporations, the private sector. How do we bridge this imbalance of power? And in my view here, the role of civil society organizations, trade unions, NHRIs, and human rights defenders is crucial. So we have to empower these actors so that they can bridge this imbalance of power on the one hand between the government and the private sector, and on the other hand, the communities which may be impacted adversely by these activities. So I very much hope that the conversation during this forum continues beyond these 2 days, and we work together in a constructive manner to move the discourse further. What is crucial is that we own this process. We are not merely here to implement the norms which are set by somewhere else. I would like people in the global south, in South Asia, to take the ownership. What works for us should be driving the change. So we should be creating those standards, working together in a constructive manner that will be effective and practical on the ground reality. With these remarks, I would like to conclude my reflections, but I think it will be remiss on my part if I do not thank the organizers of this particular event. So I think it looks simple to pull this off despite the pandemic which is with us, and this hybrid event combining there are participants online as well is going to make it more and more complicated. So I would like to thank wholeheartedly the ILO team, the UNDP team, some of whom are standing here in different parts of the room. They have worked, I have seen it, they have worked for almost 16 hours a day for weeks and weeks together. So I would like to acknowledge the hard work of all of you. Thank you very much. I look forward to this dialogue during these 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Deva. That was very, very insightful. You talked about the commonality of what we really want, and you talked about like how we have to come together. All those things have to coalesce together for this to work. You have given us 5 very concrete suggestions with the overall overarching narrative of what we want. That was very, very useful. And that gives me a wonderful transition to the high-level plenary sessions that we're going to have, BHR in South Asia, and the very, very interesting question, where are we heading?